This
about new topic
conference will
like
now be
primary
recorded.
pages. Okay, so now we'll discuss about concept of primary pages. I'll tell you what is primary page. So primary pages. For every rule in PRPC, there should be one page. So without the page, rule will not be executed. Okay, suppose if you are working on one work object ID creation, there should be one page for that. What is that page? That is PY work page. So if I'm creating one work object ID, if you open the clipboard, all these details will be stored in one page called PY work page. If you see, PY work page will be referring to that particular class. Okay, similarly for every rule, for activity or for data transform or for the application, anything, for every rule in PRPC, there should be one page running, else rule cannot be executed. So those pages are called as in primary pages. I'll tell you, for each and every rule, there should be one page, and the corresponding page on which this rule will be running, that will be considered as a primary page for that. Suppose work object ID primary page here is PWork page. Okay, and activity or data transform, it might be running on any other page. For that activity or for the data transform, primary page will be that corresponding page. PWork page is the primary page for the work object ID, and likewise for each and every rule there will be one primary page. So without the primary page, rule cannot be executed. Let me explain with one example. So we have created few activity rules, right? So let me open this activity rules. I'm opening this test one. Now if you remember, if I run this activity, so as I was telling, every rule has to be run on one page. So in order to check that, I'm putting the tracer on. I'm running this activity rule. Again run it. Close this, open the tracer, and we can able to see activity 1 has been begin on one page called run record primary page. So we have already seen how to debug one activity, but we are nowhere bothering about this page. So what is this page? This is the page on which this activity has been executed. Okay, and here we can able to see the activity has been executed on run record primary page. This will be considered as a primary page for the activities. You have to remember this. Okay, in interviews they'll be asking for the flow or the work object primary page is PWork page. This is already we know. And for the activities, primary page here is run record primary page. Whenever we run the activity, it should be running on the primary page, that is run record primary page. And now after the activity has been execution has been started, step 1 has been begun. So step 1 execution has been done successfully on page 1. Why? Because we are defining one page here. Okay, so run record primary page will be considered as a primary page for this activity rule, and wherever we are defining any of the pages, these will be considered as step pages. So here you have to come across two page names. One is primary page and one is step page. The main activity will be running on one primary page called run record primary, and the step ones, all the step pages will be running on its own defined pages. Okay, for the step one I'm defining page called page 1. I'm defining one step page here, right? So this step 1 is being executed on page 1. Agreed? Now coming to the step number 2. So on which step this on which page this step 2 will be executing? So step 2 has been executed on run record primary page, you can observe, and step 3 has been executed on page 1. Okay, so what you have to understand here is, if you are running any activity, the main activity will be running on one OOTB page or one OOTB primary page called run record primary page. And in that activity, if you are defining any of the step pages for each step, for the first step I have defined one step page. So if we are defining step page, that particular step has to be executed on that step page. If we are not defining any of the step pages, then PRPC has to execute this particular step on its parent meaning the main page on which this activity is being executed. Okay, so if any of the step page is not defined, PRPC has to execute that particular step page onto its parent primary page called run record primary page. Got my point? And in the step number 3, we are defining step page again. So this will not be executed on run record primary page. This will be executed on the page 1. Getting my point? Suppose if I define page 2 like this, if I save and run, what it will be doing? The test one activity will be executed on run record primary page. This is we know. And step one will be executed on page one, and step two will be executed on page two. We will not be having run record primary page here. Okay. So if any of the steps are not defined for the activity, then it will be running on its parent primary page. Okay. So ultimately for each and every execution, PRPC has to pick up one page, else it cannot able to run it. So this have to remember very blindly. Okay, for every rule or for every step to be executed, PRPC has to run it on one page, and by default run record primary page is the primary page for activities. Okay, for activities the primary page is run record primary page. This is important, and if any of the step pages are defined, those steps will be running on the corresponding step pages, and if any of the step page is not defined, okay, if I'm not defining here, then step one will be executed on page one, and step two has no page defined, so it should not be executed without a page. So what the page it will be picking on the main activity what it is taking. So main activity is running on run record primary page, and that's why step two will be working on that page. Okay, getting my point? Let me take step number activity two. The same thing, if I run this, run it, open the tracer, you trace it, you start from the event number 9. Okay, so test number 2 activity has been executed on run record primary page. This is already we know, every activity should be executing on primary page called run record primary page, and the execution has been started on this page, and step 1 has to be begin on page 2. You can able to see step 1 is on page 2 and step 2 is also on page 2. Why? Because we are defining step pages here. If any of the step page is not defining, if I'm removing both of this and saving this, all the things will be executed on run record primary page. So I'm removing this, I'm saving it now. Okay, so I'm just commenting it. So if we give double line, the step will be commented. So during runtime, step number 2 will not be used for calculation, sorry, for the execution. So let me take one more page now, let us say. So I'm running this. Before that, let me clear. I'm running this activity, run it, and close this as well, and go to the tracer. So we know this particular activity has to be executed on run record primary page, and here I have not defined any of the steps. So step page is blank, step page is blank, blank. So everywhere each and every step has to be executed on its primary page of the activity. That is run record primary page. You can able to see, right? All the steps are being executed on the same page called run record primary page. Okay, if any of the rule is having main primary page, okay, and in between if any of the child rules which are used within that rule, if no page is defined, then it will be automatically picking up the its parent rule primary page. You understood this, right? Both of you understood? Clear? So I'm reverting it back, that's it. So if I remove this during execution, this will be running on page 2 and this will be running on run record primary page. Now let me show you one thing. So I'm using calling the activity 2 from the activity 1. Okay, I'm just reverting, nothing more than that. So now I'm calling this activity 2 from activity 1. So before that, let me clear the tracer. I think I have closed it. I have to log off and log in again. Okay, let me try once. So run it on the tracer, we'll be getting this error. So if you get this type of error, you have to log off and log in, the only solution. So make sure you don't close the tracer. So instead you can pause the tracer now. Instead of closing, you can able to just pause it. Then events will not be traced, then processing will be faster. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to trace the activity one. And one more thing, if we just log off, sorry, if we just log in, initially we'll be getting this recent tab in the Explorer. And if you're not making any modifications here, I mean, if you are collapsing this, or if you're not selecting App Explorer or any other thing, it will be keep on monitored. Suppose if I open any other rule, okay, suppose if I'm opening this test rule, so test2 has been at the came at the top, right? So all the time this will be keep on loading. If you open this, instead you can able to open the other Explorer, or you can able to collapse it, then that loading will not happen. Okay, then processing will be faster. In your real here in our personal editions, you will not be feeling the much difference, but in the real time it will be taking a long time, right, for the loading. Then you'll be finding the difference of the time. Okay, now let that put the tracer on. You can able to open the tracer from here also, and I'm running it. So what I did, I just executed this activity, that's it. So here we know this we are running this activity one, right? So test one will be executed on run record primary page, and here step one is beginning on page one, we have defined here. And step two, where is it? Step two has been started on run record primary page. You can able to see. Why? Because I have not defined any of the page here. Okay, so step two has to be executed on the parent page, that is run record primary page. And now if I open it here, I'm going to the test two. So test two also has been executed on run record primary page only. This is also expected. And here step one is on page two, and step two is also on the page two, and it is again coming back to step activity one, and activity one step number two has been executed on the step page. Okay, so now let me show you one more thing. I'm giving here also page one. So I will not clear the events, I want to show you the comparison. So just save this. What is it? Okay, we cannot able to call it. Okay, no problem. I'll show you in another way. Okay, let me explain theoretically then. So what I wanted to show here is, so initially I'm trying to call this activity 2 from the activity 1, and here I'm not defining any of this step, right? So here this will be executed on run record, and step 2 will be executed on the run record primary page. Why? Because I'm not defining any of the step. Suppose if I'm defining something like sample, okay, if I'm defining something like sample and save this, now if I run the activity, what it will be doing, we know that test one, I mean activity one will be executed on run record primary page, and step one will be executed on page one, and step two has to be executed on sample. And if you go to this step two, I mean activity two, here what are we saying? Activity 2 has been begin on run record primary page. Why it is picking run record primary page? Meaning this particular activity 2 has been called from step 2 of this activity 1. Okay, and here for the step 2 I am not defining any of the page. If you are not defining any of the page, even the step 2 will be executed on run record primary page, and this will be considered as a parent to this particular page. So that's why this activity execution is also happening on run record primary page. Now if I'm giving something like this one, I'm defining one sample page for step 2. Okay, so now I'm executing this. Now what it will be doing, it will be executing this activity on run record primary page, and the step 1 will be executed on this page, and step 2 has to be executed on sample page. So here, so step 2 has to be executed on sample, meaning this will be considered as a page to this entire step. Getting my point? So this will be considered as a page to the entire step. The same thing, page 1 will be considered as an whole page for this step 1, and sample will be considered as a page for this entire step 2. So in step 2, what I'm doing, I'm trying to call one activity 2, meaning activity 2 has to be executed on this sample page. Then here you will be getting like sample here. Okay, so here you will be getting sample. Why? Because if no page is defined, it will be pulling out the primary page, and if I'm defining any of the page here, on this page only this activity has to be executed. I'm defining one page, so this activity test2 activity has to be executed on this defined page. Here we'll be getting sample. Okay, and here we'll be getting sample, and this step 1 has to be executed on page 2 what I'm defining. And if I'm not defining any value here and saving this, okay, and earlier case what we have done, what we have seen, if any of the page has been not defined for any of the step, then it will be pulling out its primary page. Okay, in the earlier case, the primary page for this activity is run record primary page. Why? Because this is blank. But now in this case, the primary page, sorry, the page for this step 2 will be sample, and this whole activity has to be executed on this page only. Okay, so in the runtime what you can able to see, you can able to see this step 1 executing on page 2, and this step 2 will not picking up the run record primary page, it will be picking up its parent primary page, and in this case it is sample here. Got my point? Understood both of you? Want me to explain again? Uma and Tulani?
Yeah, Chandra, one more time.
Okay, let me explain. Tulani, you also, I mean, clear, or I'll explain anyways. I just wanted to check. That's it.
Clear, Chandra.
Okay. So I'm explaining it again. So if any of the step page, yeah, you're telling something?
No, Chandra, no.
Yeah, if any of the step page is not defined, what we are seeing, PRPC has to pick up its primary page what the main activity is running. Now suppose if I'm running this activity, step 1 will be this activity will be executed on run record primary page, and now step 1 will be executed on page 1. Why? Because we are defining. Suppose if I'm not defining it here, step 1 will be executed on run record primary page only, step 2 has to be executed on run record primary page only, step 3 will be executed on page 1. Okay, so the primary page for this activity 1 is run record primary page, and the primary page for this step 1 will be run record primary page, and the primary page for the step 2 will be also run record primary page, and for the step 3 it will be page 1. Understood? As just discussed, the primary page for this step number 2 will be run record primary page. Sorry, yes, run record primary page. Primary page for this test 2 will be run record primary page, and that's why this activity execution will be happening on the run record primary page only. Suppose if I'm defining one page here, so now I'm running this activity. So test 1 activity primary page is run record primary page, and step 1 primary page will be run record primary page. Why? Because I'm not defining the step here. Okay, and step number 2 primary page will be sample. Okay, so the entire primary page for this step number 2 will be sample, and in step number 2 what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to execute one more activity. So whatever the thing we are defining this step number 2 has to be running on this page only. So if we check in the tracer, step number 2, activity number 2 will be executed on sample page, not on the run record primary page. This has to be executed on sample page. Why? Because this will be considered as a parent to this entire step. In entire step, whatever we are doing, that is secondary. Okay, the whole thing for the for the whole step, the parent will be sample only. And inside sample, if you are defining anything, it will be taking this page. And here, if we are not defining anything, what it has to do, this step has to pick up the primary page for this activity. The primary page for this activity is sample. Understood? So even step 2 of this activity 2 has to be running on sample page. This is the page. Now we clear, Uma?
Yeah, now clear.
Okay. So Tulan, you also right?
Yes, Chandra.
Yeah. So the main thing what you have to understand here is for the activities, primary page will be run record primary page, and for the flows or the work object IDs will be created by running one flow only. So the primary page for the flow will be PY work page. Okay, if any of the rule is having the primary page, and if I'm calling any of the child rules within that main rule, okay, even the child rules has to be executed on the main primary page of the parent rule. So the live example is this one only. So I'm trying to call this activity 1, and within this activity I'm trying to call some hundreds of rules, let us say. So in this case I'm calling only one rule. So the main parent primary page of this activity 1 will be considered as a parent to its all the childs if step pages are not defined. Okay, so now I'll ask you one thing. We already know that primary page for the flow is PY work page. Okay, primary page for the flow is PY work page. And now, as I just told you, if I am calling any of the rules within this flow, then the primary page for all the rules also will be by default primary page only. One live example is this one only. Activity 1 is running on one primary page called run record primary page, and what are all the rules I'm using within that? The primary page for all the child rules also should be run record primary page by default. And in between I'm trying to override the page names by defining the step pages. That is what we have seen. And now the flow primary page is PY work page, and within flow we have many rules calling. I'll be calling many flow actions and many sections. I'll be calling many when conditions. Activities will be calling data transforms, anything. So what are all the rules we are calling from the main rule? What the primary page for this main rule will be considered as a primary page for all this. Getting my point? So for the flow actions, by default primary page will be PY work page only. For the section rule, by default primary page will be PY work page only for all these things. And if you want to change it manually, that's secondary. Okay, by default whatever the main rule is having as the primary page, that page will be considered as a primary page for all its rules. Okay, and yesterday we have seen, yesterday we are working with the parameters also, no? So for parameters, so if I just want to give region value, what I did, I have selected like param dot region. Okay, so what is this? So this is the primary page for the parameters. Okay, for each and everything there should be one page, else PRPC will not be allowing that to run. And for the data pages, so we have discussed about data pages also. So data pages, if I run one data page, okay, and if I have many rules like report definition within that, or activities or connectors integration, I may be having many rules called within this data page also, no? And the primary page for the data page is data page only. Why? Because data page itself is a page. Okay, so if I'm calling one report definition within this data page, the primary page for that report definition will be data page only, and the primary page for that activity will be data page only. And here the primary page for the activities, when conditions, flows, whatever the thing I'm trying to call it from the flow, the primary page will be PY work page. Okay, suppose let me show you. If I'm calling an activity, just we have created one activity like pull states drop down, right? So we have created one more activity called pulling up the states. For pulling up the states, that activity, are we running it forcefully? Forcefully meaning this one. If we run any of the activity by using a standalone, so this type of an activity execution is called as standalone execution activity. So if I'm trying to run the activity standalone, the primary page for that will be run record primary page. And if I'm trying to call the same activity from the flow, just like the full states activity, the primary page for that should be PY work page. Why? Because I'm trying to call that activity from the flow. Okay, so the primary page for that activity which is being called as part of the flow execution should be of PY work page. If you just check in the tracer, you will not be finding anywhere like run record primary page. You'll be finding everywhere like PY work page only. I'll show you, no problem. And if I'm trying to run the activity standalone, okay, then it has to pick up the OOTP primary page for this activity, and that is run record primary page. Understood? Understood, both of you?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now let me show you. So this is the activity I'm trying to execute, right? So if I just run this, I can able to see everything executed on run record primary page. Let me clear it. So if I run the standalone activity, everything is being executed on run record primary page. So this has to be executed on run record primary page, and there is no step page defined for here for the step number 2. That's why it is picking up its primary page called run record primary page. Okay, and here we have defined 2 step names. That is why it is working on properly. Let me delete that as well. If you, so we have not defined anything. Okay, so if any of the step page is not defined, it will be using its primary page. So the primary page for the activity 2 will be the primary page of the activity 1. Why? Because this particular step 2 has no step page defined. If I define the step page like page 2 or page 3, then this page 3 will be considered as a primary page for the activity 2. Okay, once the primary page of the activity 2 is considered with some value, then if any of the steps which are not defined within this activity 2, this should be the primary page. It will not be picking up the it will not be picking up the run record primary page. It has to pick up the its primary page, that is like sample 1 or sample 2. Okay, now let me call this activity from the flow. Okay, so I can able to call this activity from many places. I can able to run this activity from standalone, or I can able to run the activity as part of flow. I can able to run the activity from the flow actions. I can able to run this activity on button click, or from the data transforms, or from the data pages, everywhere. From most of the things I can able to call this activity. Okay, now let me show you how to call the same activity from the flow. So if I call this from the flow, then I should be seeing this activity to be executed on its primary page called PEGA page. Okay, that is my expectation. So for that, let me run this activity, that is test one activity, from the flow. So for that, open the flow rule. So I'm trying to open the flow rule. And remember that if you want to call any of the activity from the flow, you have to go for utility shape. So today we'll be learning something new, how to call an activity from the flow. So in order to make any changes in the flow, you have to make the draft on. There will be interview questions on the primary pages also. They'll be asking about activities. The primary pages for the activities. Okay. So now I want to call the same activity like test one, what we are doing like standalone execution earlier. I want to execute from the flow. For that, you have to take one utility shape. So this is the utility shape. Utility shape purpose is to call an activity. That's it. So change the connection and save this. Connect it back. So here I have to call the utility, call the activity, right? So whenever we want to call any of the activity from the utility shape, make sure that activity type should be of utility. This you have to remember. So if we go to the security tab, by default this will be of activity. Under activity type, it will be of activity, meaning this will be used as normal business perspective. Now if I want to use this activity from the flows, we have to go with utility shape only. And if we want to use the activity into this utility shape, you have to change the security and you have to change the type to utility. Okay, got my point? Now save this. I'm trying to save the activity. That's it. First initial. This is not accepted. Okay, this is saved. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to call the activity, same activity here. So just double click on that activity. So we'll be using activities, utility shapes very widely. So just click on down arrow. We should be seeing that activity here. Select this and submit. Draft off and save. So why are we using activity here? So if any of the business logics has to be executed as part of the flow, you need not click on button, or you need not call it data page, or you need not run the activity standalone. But still you want to perform something like pulling the pulling something from the database or integration with or interacting with the third-party applications like it. Whatever the thing you want to perform as part of standalone, you can able to make this activity. Sorry, as part of the work object execution, you have to call it via utility shapes on. After this class, we'll discuss about the business requirement, how where we'll be using this utility shape in the business perspective. I'll show you. Now I'm saving this. That's it. Now let me run the flow. You can able to run it from here or from here also. And let me put the tracer on. Sorry, I close the tracer. Open the flow rule and try to change this to App Explorer. Then this will not be changing, right, all the time. Now put the tracer on and execute it, and make sure you have flow rules also. If you don't have flow also, no problem. I want to trace the activity, so activity is on here, so I need not make any changes. Now I'm running this. Okay, so you can able to check in the tracer. So first assignment has been reached, and go to the next assignment. So here also some flow things will be coming, and click on the next. We can able to see, and now we should be seeing two activities or one activity for this here, right? Okay, so just click on submit. We're using data pages now. Okay, so key values must be specified. Okay, so after clicking on submit button, what we have seen, after clicking on the submit button of the fourth assignment, did we see anything related to this? It has directly reached to the end shape. So in between, in the tracer, we can able to see we are calling one utility shape, and with that we are calling one activity. So the test one activity we can able to see. So the primary page for this test one activity is PEGA page. Okay. So the primary page for this test one activity is PEGA page, and this step one should be also running on PEGA page. So earlier this step one has been executed on run record primary page. If this is blank, it should be picking up its parent, its primary page. So in this case, it is PEGA page only. So step one has been executed on PEGA page, and step two, even step two is also not defined. Even step two has to be executed on PEGA page only. So this is what we are seeing. Even step two is executed on PEGA page only. Now this is activity two, right? In activity two, we can able to see page 2 and page 2. Suppose if we are not defining this one, suppose if we are saving this, so this step 1 of this activity 2 has to be executed on its primary page, and here its primary page for this test 2 activity will be PEGA page. Here also we'll be seeing PEGA page on. So you understood, right? So from where are we calling this particular rule? That is important. So the primary page for the activities is not standalone, is not run record primary page always. So from where are we calling this particular rule? That is important. If we are calling this activity from flow, then the primary page will be PEGA page. And if I'm calling this activity from data pages, then this activity has to be running on data pages. And if I'm calling this activity from integrations, then the primary page for that will be my service page. And if I'm calling this activity standalone, then primary page will be run record primary page. Likewise, so all the time primary page will be not static, it will be dynamic based on from where we are calling this. That is very, very important. Understanding now? So earlier we have seen this test 1 and test 2, these are executed on run record primary page. Why? Because we are trying to execute this standalone. Now you try to call this activity from data pages or from the integrations or anywhere, then this primary page here will be like data page or the my service page or anything as per the context. Then if any of the step pages are not defined, then it will be looking for the primary page of that, and it will be pulling out PEGA page or my service page or anything, data pages or anything. Clear, right? both of you? So in this prospect, we have understood the importance of primary pages, and wherever we want to use any of the things like okay, suppose here what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to set the first name property. Okay, so if I'm running this activity, from pwork page, then it will be picking up the first name property from pwork page. Okay, and instead if I put it like primary, so instead if I put it like primary dot, if I save this, now if I run this activity as part of the flow, then what it will be doing, it will be picking up the first name property from its primary page, that is pwork page here. So during runtime, PRPC can able to easily understand the keyword primary. Okay, so if this activity has been executed from flow diagram as part of flow, then it will be picking up first name property from PV work page, and it will be setting the value like PEGA. And if the same activity I am trying to execute from data pages, okay, so the same activity I'm trying to call from the data pages, that's it. Then on the data page, if I'm having one property like first name, then it will be picking up primary dot first name as the data page dot first name. Suppose if you are not defining like this, suppose if you are not defining primary, so instead you are defining something like PV work page. If you are defining like this, even then in this case it will be working. Okay, in this case it will be working. Why? Because we are trying to run this activity from flow. So PRPC can able to understand that PV work page is one of the primary page for this, and it will be picking the first name property from that. And now if I want to use the same activity for the data pages context, can I able to use this? I should not be using this. It has to be changed again. So d underscore something. Okay, then if I use this activity in the data pages, then execution will be working fine. It will be picking up the first name property from that particular data page, and it will be executing. Suppose if I want to execute the same activity within integrations, then I have to define like this, my service page dot first name. Okay, then also it will be working fine. So all the time, if I just hard code the values like pwork page or the data page or my service page or run record primary page or param anything, if I hard code the value of the primary page, I cannot able to reuse this activity. If this activity is meant for reusable, or if this particular property set is meant for reusable, then what I have to do, if I just define something keyword like primary, then PRPC can able to easily understand during runtime the primary keyword. So if this activity has been executed from the flow, primary value will be automatically picked up like pworkpage.firstname. If I am using this activity from the data pages, so it will be changing it to dpage.firstname. Similarly, my service page.firstname. So it can be reusable. Okay. So that is the biggest advantage with the primary pages. PRPC can able to easily decode the keyword primary based on from where it is being executed. That is important. So from the next classes or from the next uh, business requirements, we will not be putting anything like dot first name or pwork page dot first name. Everywhere we have to use the keyword called primary. If I make this a habit to use this primary keyword, then I can able to make use of reusability. I mean, I can able to make use of these rules. PRPC can able to easily decode the value of primary based on from where it is executed. Understood, no, both of you?
Yes.
So now I'll show you one business requirement. Tulani, you also clear, right?
Yes, sir.
So we'll be working on one business requirement. My business requirement here is, once the customer is entering all his values, I'm running one work object. Let me put the tracer off, else it will be taking. Okay. So again, I have clicked on tracer, right? So it is showing multiple windows. That's why it will be getting that error. Okay. So if I'm if I'm creating one work object ID, customer will be entering all his details here. Okay, and if he clicks on submit, he will be entering all his details. So now my requirement here is, on clicking on submit button of the final assignment or the final flow action or the section, I want to store all these details. Okay, all these details in one data table. So what are the first name values or what are the phone number, everything, what are the thing the customer is entering, I'm not maintaining anywhere, right? If I want to get the first name details or the last name details of this particular customer, Okay, then my business requirement is to create one separate data table, and in the data table I want to hold all the values of the registered customers. So we have created one data table for holding the values of state as well as the hospital, right? Now my requirement here is I want to create one separate data table, and in that data table I want to include all the values like first name, last name, mail ID, gender, nominee 1, nominee 2, and his beneficiary type and beneficiary amount. I have to see all these details in one data table. Okay, so in this process I'll show you how to work with obj save and how to create one new data table, that is already we know, and how to insert the data dynamically into our the data table. Okay, and how to use the activities with the primary pages. So these three concepts will include and I'll show you. Understood the requirement, right, both of you? So on clicking on submit button of the final screen, first screen customer will be entering details, and in the second screen customer enter details, and on clicking on submit button of the final screen I want to save all these details automatically without I running the activity or without I doing anything manually. So for this process what I will be doing is I will be creating one activity, and that activity has to be executed as part of this flow, right? On clicking on submit button of the last screen it has to be executed, so I should be calling one utility shape, and in that utility shape I will be calling one activity, and in that activity I'll be writing one obj save. Obj save is to save all these details into one data table. Okay, for that I have to create one data table, correct? So data table I will be creating, and in the data table I have to include what are all the what are all the properties or what are all the columns I have to include. I'll be defining the table structure, and I will be including all this data dynamically into the table using the activity. Understood? Requirement understood, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Tulani, you also clear, right?
Yes, sir.
So first thing, let me show you how to create one activity using obj save. I'm trying to create one activity. So save customer details. So this is my new activity, and here I want I have to save the customer details data into that particular data table. So first I have to define the table properties. Let me do that first. Sorry for showing you this. So let me create one data table, and in that data table I have to create all the necessary properties. What are all the properties I want to save? I have to create there. So in order to create one data table, I'm trying to click on data table, data type, and save, add data, and save custody details. I'm giving something like this. So click on advanced, and let me create it in the organization data class.
Here the identifier you have to select or you have to give the same place.
Which identifier?
Yeah, Chandra. After selection of data type, we are providing the save customer detail as identifier. After that, you are choosing some identifier type, right?
In this data table you're talking about?
Yeah, data types.
Yeah, in
While
this data
creating
type.
data types.
Yeah, while creating the data types, I have not done anything. I have just given the class name. And here we'll be adding few properties, and that I will be putting like an primary. That is the thing you're asking, or?
Yeah, can you open it?
Okay.
Okay, so here you have given some identifier yeah, label.
Okay.
After that, you have to choose.
Okay, whatever the values we enter, automatically, as I told you, whenever we're creating one data type, one data class will be created, right? So that is the thing it is showing here. So this is the data class that will be created on top of organization. So this is picking up by default organization data class, but I want to create, sorry, this is picking up by default the framework data class. I'm trying to change this data class to be created on the organization data. That's it. The same approach what we have followed earlier.
Okay.
So earlier we have created one data table for the states and hospitals, right? That I also have
Yes.
created on the organization data class. So there also we have
Yeah.
made the identifier, change the identifier.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
that's it. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
once,
So the
yeah,
framework
so,
into organization ID. Okay.
I just changed the data class name.
Okay.
So now I'm trying to create one data type, and here I have to add the few columns, right? I want to include customer first name or customer full name. So this is for my holding purpose, data holding only. So your customer will be entering his first name, last name. Let me capture his full name, uh, his mobile number from the screen, and in the next screen I'll be picking up nominee details. Likewise, let me show you how to capture each and everything. So full name I want to pick out, and I want to pick his mail ID, mobile number, and then after I want to pick his nominee one name. Nominee one. So what are all the details you want to save? It's up to you. I just want to show you the basic things now. And I want to save the beneficiary type also. And let me show the state value as well as the hospital value. So now, whenever I'm trying to create one source for this, if I save this, I have to configure some source, right? The source might be either hard-coded value, what we're trying to give, or it can be directly imported from the Excel sheet, or I can able to directly, I can able to import it from dynamically also. I can able to use activities or some source. So first thing I have to create the source for this. Configuring source meaning it will be considered as one data storage kind of thing. And once we configure the source, we have to give one primary key. Remember, so for the state data type, we have given state code as the primary key, and for the hospital values, we have given hospital code as the primary key, right? So for that, for every table, there should be one primary column. So can we consider any of this as the primary column? Full name cannot be primary, mail ID cannot be primary. So these cannot be considered as a primary. So each and every work object ID should be, I mean, each and every record should be given with one unique unique ID, right? So for that, I want to include one unique ID like customer ID. Okay.
Okay.
So if we want to save these details into this record dynamical using activities, whatever the values I enter in this work object, those will be coming here. So the first name what I'm entering or the last name whatever entering, those will be clubbed here and it will be shown in the full name and the mail ID, everything. And there will be one work object ID generated, right? So this work object ID I want to include as the customer ID. Okay. So this
Okay.
should be listed as a customer ID. So that is my requirement now. So now save this. And you have to configure the source. Yes, this will not be considered as a data table.
Okay.
So click on configure source and let me make this as the primary key. Okay.
Okay.
And whatever the properties we are creating, it will be created in the reverse order. We can able to rearrange. How are we seeing the data now? I mean, how are we seeing the order of the data? What we are seeing, table will be created in that format. So I want to see the full name first, then after his mobile number, after mail ID. Okay, so I'm just saving it, submitting.
Okay.
So even now, data pages will be created, report definitions will be created, properties will be created, data class will be created, and mapping rule will be created. So these 6 rules you have to remember. You can able to see one data table will be created for that, one mapping rule will be created, report definitions will be created, data pages will be created. So this is my requirement. Here I should be getting all this data. So my requirement here is whatever the work object details that we are entering as part of there, those are to be automatically filled out here. Instead of we clicking on this link or this link, those are to be inserted dynamically. So for that we have to go for activities. So this is the activity I have just created. And now, as I told you, if you want to interact with the database, we have to go for OBJ activity, OBJ methods. So let me create one new page first initially. So new page, I'm giving something like custody details. Okay, any page, whatever the thing we want, you can able to do that. And this has to be defined, right? In the pages and classes, this page has to be loaded with one page, so one class called data save. So this is the class that will be holding the value. So this class will, I mean, this page will be holding the value related to this class. That's why this should be referring to that class. So we are creating one new page. This is already we know. And next thing is I have to perform obj save. Obj save meaning it will be inserting or it will be updating the data to the database. Okay. So what should be the data? Either I have to insert or update. I have to have some data ready, right? So after creating the new page, I have to insert some data for the modifications or for the updations. First I have to insert that data onto this page, and that page has to be done with obj save. So before that I have to insert the data onto this page. For that we have to go for property set. So if I directly go for obj save method now, what data it will be saving? Okay, so whatever the data I want to set onto this obj save, I have to define it here. Okay, I'm using property set. So under property set I have to set the values. Okay, now let me run this. So whatever the selections I'm doing here, like north or south or anything, whatever the values I'm selecting here, those are to be saved onto this particular data table. You agree, right? Now if I select
Yeah.
all these values and click on submit button, where I can get all these values in the clipboard? Ultimately I have to use for the clipboard. I have to go for the clipboard only for the processing. So where can I get all these values in the clipboard? In PV work page. Agreed.
Yes.
So PV work page dot region or PV work page dot hospital selection, I can able to get this value. Okay. So whatever the values I'm selecting, either first name or last name, that will be considered as an PV work page dot first name or PV work page dot last name. So here we can able to consider this as in primary dot first name or primary dot last name or primary dot states, anything. So if I want to get all these values, then I have to just check in the clipboard like primary dot first name or primary dot last name. Okay, and these are the values, and these values are to be stored to one place. Okay, so the value, I mean, primary dot mobile number will be the customer entered mobile number, right? So the primary dot mobile number has to be entered here. So how can I get this address? This address will be of this class, right? This address will be customer details dot mobile number. You understanding, both of you? So the primary dot mobile number, that is customer entering, whatever the values that customer is entering on the clipboard, it will be stored as primary dot, either first name, last name. Primary dot means PV page only in this context. So PV page dot first name, PV page dot last name, or PV page dot mobile number. And that is the value, and that value has to be stored automatically here. Okay, and what is the address for this? Customer, chg data custody details dot mobile number. So primary dot mobile number has to be saved into this class dot mobile number. You agree? Understanding, right?
Yeah.
And that class, the data class dot first name, will be under this page. So this page we have already defined, this class will be linked to this page. And if I just save the data onto this page, we can able to save it directly there. So now let me select the properties from that page. So just click on dot, that's it. Click on dot and down arrow. We can able to see all the properties coming from that page only. Why? Because I'm trying to set the property values onto this page, and whatever the class that has been referring to this page, those properties will be prompted. Okay. So now I want to select the beneficiary type. Let me go one by one. So here we have to select, enter some value here. So beneficiary type should be the value from the previous work page. That is like primary dot beneficiary type. Understood?
Yeah.
Like this, you have to fill all the details. Let me explain customer ID and full name at the last. Hospital dot hospital primary dot hospital. Mail ID should be on primary dot customer details. You understanding, right? Customer details dot mail ID. Let me know if you're not understanding anywhere. So mobile number is also from this page. How many one is pending? Okay. So now I have to select two more things. That is customer ID. As I told you, customer ID, I want to put it like an work object ID only. So whatever the work object ID that is generated at that point of time, that has to be directly given as the customer ID. So in clipboard, where can I be able to see this work object ID? PY ID, right? You remember? So open the work object ID and click on clipboard. Ultimately, we have to get values from clipboard only. So from clipboard, I can able to see this value as PYID. So PYID will be holding this value. I can able to use this ID directly. So I'm using it like primary dot PYID. If you're not getting any prompts, so click on more. Why? Because this will be under work dash cover dash class. Select this. Next thing, we have to give the what's that, full name. So full name value should be customer first name plus last name. So first name and last name, those both are entered separately, right? We have to concatenate here. So primary dot customer details dot first name, give space and click on plus, then again give the same. Primary dot customer details dot last name. You understood? So now save this. I mean, after we are done with the property set, then we have to do the obj save onto this page, right? So click on add step, obj save. Obj save, it will not be asking any of the class. If you want to do either obj open or obj browse, it will be asking for the class. You remember, if you're working on obj open, I think we have not worked on it. Okay, if you're working with obj browse, we have to define the class name. So from the class name, it will be pulling out the necessary results. But with this obj save, it will not be asking you anywhere about the page, about the class. So how PRPC will be understanding this particular data has to be saved onto this particular table. It might be saving it in the states table or hospital table, no? Why? Because I'm not giving any of the table name here or the class name. PRPC will be saving all this data into this particular table only. How it will be knowing is we have to provide the page name. That's it. If you provide the page name, PRPC can able to understand this page is related to this particular class. Then it will be picking up the class from here and it will be saving all this data into that class. This is important. Understood? So you understood about the property set also, no? So initially I have created one new page, and in that page I have filled up all the data. So whatever the data we have in the primary page that have been copied into one customized page, and I'm trying to perform obj save onto this page. Understood? Now I want to call this activity as part of the flow. Okay, I have to make the modifications and I have to call this activity as part of the flow. For that, I have to make this activity of utility type. I'm just saving this. So let me make the modifications. Draft on change the activity name here. Submit, draft off, and save it. Okay, let me trace it whether it is working fine or not. So if it is not working fine, we'll trace. So I'm running the work object ID, and here I have to enter few values. I'm entering like this one. So we have given these values also, and mail ID also we have given. So submit, and nominee one details we have given, something like such a submit, and beneficiary type also we have given. We're capturing and putting it like self. Okay, I'm submitting now. So now go to that particular data table and refresh it. It should be coming. If not, we'll trace it and identify where the mistake is. See, we can able to see all the data. So PYID has been assigned to this full name. Here we're not getting space. If you want to put the space, we can able to do that. So here we can able to get the combination of first name plus last name, and here we're getting the mobile number, mail, everything. So this is how we can able to insert the data dynamically, and this is how we can able to run the activity from the flow. And if you check the tracer, this activity will be running on PWork page only. Okay, and we can able to use this. We can able to call this activity from data types or anywhere. Wherever I want to use this activity, I can able to use that. Why? Because we are giving this primary. So this will be reusable. If it is having same set of properties there also, it will be reusable. Okay, so
Chandra,
this is how
I have only one doubt. Sorry.
yeah.
When you given that OBJ save and you given that class name, right? Customer details.
Page name.
So
This is page
page.
name. Yeah.
Okay. So this page name
Mm.
is not a flow, right? We have only the personal details, and the other page shows the nominee details, and the other page
Yes.
shows the beneficiary details, right? So
Yes.
how all these three pages will be come together with one page?
That's what. So
Yeah,
all these
can you?
details where it has to be stored finally, ultimately, all these page details, if I'm using 3 different pages or 100 different pages in the execution, finally all these pages are to be has to be stored into clipboard only. Okay, so this is the page that will be holding for the first details, first screen. I am using this customer details page. So these details will be stored into clipboard as this value. Okay, and in the second screen we are using one more page called nominee. Okay, and those details will be stored in the clipboard like this value. So primary dot nominee one dot first name, I can able to use this. No, I can able to get the value of that. And if I'm
Yeah,
defining like
we
this,
can
I
get
can
the value from the clipboard, but my
yes.
question is the customer details, it have only the personal details, right?
No. Just now we have created, right? The customer details will be referring to this class. Okay, if you are getting confusion, I'm giving like this. Save
Okay.
custodials.
No issues. No, I
Okay,
thought
so
before we
no,
have created some
that is
data
different. That is
types, right?
different.
Yeah,
Okay, I thought, oh, you got confused with this page name and with this, right? Yeah, I understand.
yeah.
So you just change this and work on it. Then it will be working fine also.
Okay.
Okay, now you go. Now it is clear, right?
Yeah, clear.
Even now it will be working fine. I understood your doubt. So both the page names are same now, so that's why I got confused. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is how we can able to work with OBJ saves, and OBJ save will not be having any of the class name asking. It will be just pulling out. It will be saving all the data as per that page. So whatever the page we are defining it here, it will be identifying the class name, and it will be interacting with the database, and it can able to work on it. Okay. And
Okay.
suppose if you are entering the same kind of record, so this is one of the record that has been already executed, and this is the primary key for that. And if I'm trying to insert one more value with the same value, then this value will be acting like an updating. We'll work on that tomorrow. So
Okay.
clear, right? Any of the doubts?
Yeah, okay.
So day by day, the depth of learning is increasing, or you still feel that still PEGA is still easy?
No, it's increasing. Yeah.
Increasing, right? You have to practice it daily. Else, maybe for the next 1 week you might be following without preparing, but then after you will be feeling a burden. If you
Okay.
follow it daily, you can able to feel it easy.
Okay.
It is easy. Everyone can able to get the jobs, but most of the people, why they are not getting? Why? Because they are not practicing it daily. That's the thing.
Okay.
So you understood, right? Both of you, Uma, Tulani, any doubts?
Yeah, we understood.
So day to day, depth is increasing, no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tulani, clear, na?
Yes, Chandra. Yeah.
Okay. Tomorrow we'll just work on how to call the same activity from flow actions, and then after we'll see how to call this activity standalone. So there will be cases where we have to run the activity standalone also. I'll tell you those business scenarios and how to make the modifications by running the activity standalone. Okay, we'll see
Okay.
this tomorrow. Okay,
Okay.
I'm closing the session.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you, Chandra.
Thank you.